I curse whoever told me that and their entire family for the rest of eternity. Yes, I'm using Friends as my literary references from now on. Huh? Hello, creeps. Anna here, and today I have my February reading wrap-up for you guys. And I think I read about 10-ish books, maybe. And here are some of them. And so we're gonna go through and I'll let you know, yeah, everything I read this month. I'm also curious what you guys read this month, so let me know down below. But otherwise, let's just jump on in. So the first book that I read this month is How to Lose an Extraterrestrial in 10 Days by Susan Grant. Now, if you haven't seen my dive into erotic fiction, you'll probably be confused why I read this one. And it was for a video. And so I will leave that video linked down below. If you haven't seen it and you want to be very uncomfortable and see me very uncomfortable, then I highly recommend watching that guy. This is about a woman who falls in love with an alien who tried to assassinate her brother-in-law. And she just couldn't help it because he was so hot and out of this world. It's pretty interesting. I mean, it wasn't the worst book I've ever read, to be honest. It wasn't written poorly or anything. It just was, it's just not my cup of tea, you know? Romance slash erotica, especially the extraterrestrial variety. It's just not really what I'm into reading in my free time. But you know, if you like erotic fiction, you might enjoy this one. It wasn't bad. I also read Unhinged by Vera Valentine. Well, I read Taken by the Pterodactyl as well. You know, I read a lot. I read a few erotic stuff, but I won't go into all of them. They're all in that video. I'm only putting on this list books that were over, I think, 50 pages. So the next one was Unhinged by Vera Valentine. This is about another erotic fiction about a sentient door and a relationship between that sentient door and the woman that door protects from the outside world. Yeah, another weird one. Again, I won't go too into it because you can watch that other video. But let's get into the actual, you know, other books that I read. The non-erotic books. Okay, so after the erotic fiction, I decided to pick up Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. Now, I have never read Wuthering Heights before. This was my first read through. So I thought it was a romance novel, and that is what I was told in college. So actually, I curse whoever told me that and their entire family for the rest of eternity, because it is absolutely not a romance story. It's about a man named Heathcliff. He gets adopted into a family. So this father goes away on some work trip or something and then comes back with this baby and then raises it with his own children. One of the children is called Catherine, and I suppose the love story that they're talking about is between Heathcliff and Catherine. And so, but the story is also written in kind of a weird way. So there's a man that goes and rents a house, and then he goes to his landlord's home, which happens to be Heathcliff, and everyone there is kind of a dick. And so he goes back to the house that he's renting, who has like a maid lady, and he's like, hey, everyone's kind of a dick over there, can you let me know what happened? And so she goes back in time and tells you the entire story of Heathcliff and Catherine and what happened to everybody. And basically, I mean, I'm not gonna give anything away, but basically Heathcliff is the biggest pile of shit that I have ever been introduced to. I think I did a Q&A video a few months ago, and someone asked me who's my least favorite character in literature, and I couldn't think of anyone. It is Heathcliff. It is Heathcliff. So there you go. There's your answer. I hope that person watches this video one day because it's Heathcliff. I remember in my Shakespeare classes in college, my Shakespeare teacher would always talk about how Iago was the worst character in all of literature because all he did was just try to ruin everyone's life. And I guarantee you, Heathcliff is at least the same level of evilness as Iago is. I'm gonna have to reread Othello and let you know for certain. But I mean, Heathcliff is a pile of crap. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I posted so many pictures of this book and just my rage for Heathcliff because honestly, fuck you, Heathcliff. Just fuck you. So anyways, it goes back and tells the story of Heathcliff and Catherine, which are adopted brothers and sisters, but they're not related by blood, and their love story. But here's the thing. to me, love is selfless, you know? Love is kind. Love is everything that these two characters are not, and I don't think that this is a love story by any measure. I think that the reason why Catherine and Heathcliff even have an attraction to one another is because they see themselves in that person. It's more, I think, about their obsession and their love with themselves than with anything. They're awful characters, awful. They do anything they can to just ruin everyone's lives around them, and I don't want to go into too much of the story, but it's just about Heathcliff's life and how he's a piece of shit. Like, that's really what this entire book is. And so yeah, I was really surprised when I read it. It wasn't a bad book by any means. I rather enjoyed the read, and I thought that it was way different than I had been told it was growing up. Also, when you Google it, it says that it's a tragedy, and I don't also know that it fits into that box for me either. It's definitely something, but fuck you, Heathcliff. And even on the back, this is the quote: "Be with me always, take any form, drive me mad, only do not leave me in the abyss where I cannot find you." That quote is taken so out of context and put on the back to make it seem like it's a love story. It's not. It is not a love story to me. And honestly, if you guys think that this is a love story, that's totally fine. However, I really hope that that's not your idea of love. But if you think that this is like a classic love story, that's fine. I just disagree because fuck Heathcliff. Anyways, don't know if I've ever hated a character more than I hate Heathcliff, but fuck that guy. Next we have The Silent Patient. I do not know how to say this person's last name, and I will pronounce it incorrectly. So it's Alex, and this is his last name. This is everybody's favorite thriller book in the world, and my friend actually owned this one, so I was like, oh, can I read this? So I borrowed it, I read it, and I just have to, I think, come to terms with the fact that I'm just not a thriller person. I think it's not the thrillers that are the issue. I think it's me. I think I just don't enjoy them the way other people do. So this one is about a therapist or something. I can't remember exactly what he is. A psychotherapist? Yes, okay. He's a psychotherapist. He ends up taking on a patient who murdered her husband and hasn't spoken since the day that it happened. Hence the name, The Silent Patient. And this is, okay, this is me going into every thriller. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, this is me halfway through. Oh, this is so good. Oh, this, I wonder what's gonna happen. This is so good. And then this is me at the end. Okay. And that's how I feel with reading almost all thrillers. So here's what I'll say about this one. Of thriller books, this one is the better of them, okay? But that's not to say that there still aren't any huge glaring issues with this book. First of all, I think that it is extremely well written. I was super invested. The first half, absolutely loved it. But there are just some plot holes that I'm like, oh, we're just not gonna talk about that? We're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. Okay, gotcha. I just couldn't get past them. I did figure out some stuff going into it, and I just felt meh about the ending. I was pretty disappointed by the ending, if I'm completely honest. It just disappointed me a little. However, I really did love a lot of things in here. I really did love the use of snow and the way that it's used to kind of mirror specific things. I don't want to give anything away, but I really did like things like that. And I did enjoy the ride about halfway through. I don't know. Let me know how you guys feel about this one, because everyone loves this book. So I'm curious if, when you guys love thrillers, is it because you can predict things? Is it because you see things coming? Or is it because you connect to the characters? Is it because you're surprised? Like, I'm very curious how people feel and connect with thrillers, because I'm just having a really hard time. I asked you guys over on Instagram for your favorite thrillers, and you guys did give me a pretty big list, so I do appreciate that, and I have picked up some of those since. But if you guys on here have any other suggestions to thrillers that don't boil my blood, then I would really appreciate it. I think a good thriller is when little clues are left so that at the end, when it's revealed, the killer or whatever it is, that you go, oh my gosh, and that's why this and that, and oh, that's great, right? But when it's too predictable, I have an issue with it. Or it's so unpredictable that you didn't even leave clues to who it was. Like, you left clues to be like, oh, it's definitely this guy. And then at the end, you're like, just kidding, it's his grandpa. and you're like, what? The grandpa wasn't even in the story. You know what I mean? So that's how I feel with thrillers. I think they can be really great, and I think when you find a good thriller, you're just like, oh my god, there's nothing like reading a good thriller book, but they're so few and far between. So anyways, of the thrillers, this is a better one, but I was still a little bit disappointed with some stuff in there. Okay, next I read Red Velvet Vengeance by Addison Moore. This is that Murder in the Mix series. This was the Valentine's Day one. I bought it to read on Valentine's Day. I bought it to read on Valentine's Day because it takes place on Valentine's Day, and I'm really enjoying the themes of every month and having a book to read for holidays. I think that's so fun. And also, her birthday is in March, and my birthday is in March, and so that's crazy. So the next one I'm going to read on my birthday, which is St. Patrick's Day, and then yeah, we get to share not a birthday, but a birthday month, and so I'm excited for that. Anyways, maybe got a little bit too excited that me and Lottie Lemon have the same birthday, but anyways, I bought this one to read it on Valentine's Day, and I started it the day before because it's a few hundred pages long, and I was like, I'll finish it on Valentine's Day, and then I read it all the day before because I couldn't put it down. And again, if you guys haven't seen any of my videos, it's just about this baker who finds a person who was murdered in a small town and has to try to solve the murder. That's kind of, yeah, what's in it. But I think the books are really picking up now. That's the 5th or 6th one that I've read, and so you're kind of starting to get more insight into her background, and there's more stuff that's popping up, and it's not as like cookie cutter as the first few may have felt like. So yeah, there's that one. The next one that I read was Bone White by Ronald Malfi. This one I read as an ebook, and I believe it's free on Amazon Kindle if you want to read it. You know how they have, I think it's like this, where they have like some free ones that you can kind of like almost rent, and so it's on there if you guys want to read it. I think someone's vacuuming. Oh, that's so loud. I don't think I've ever heard my neighbors vacuuming before. Anyways, this one was pretty cool. I mean, I love Ronald Malfi books. I love the way that he writes. This one is about a man. His brother went missing about a year ago, and then around the town, he went missing in Alaska, but the brother, the main character, lives somewhere in, I don't know, the East Coast somewhere. Is that going to be annoying? I hope you guys can't hear that. The brother that lives on the East Coast, his brother went missing. They're twins, actually. The twin went to Alaska on a trip, just disappeared, fell off the face of the planet, and nobody knows what happened to him. But the last picture that he sent his brother was around this very small town, and in the news, this brother sees, sorry, I can't even remember their names. Actually, I think this one's name was Paul. He sees on the news that there's a man in this small town who went to the police and said, hey, I murdered a bunch of people, here are the graves. And so the brother is like, well, obviously one of them has to be my brother. So he ends up going over to Alaska to try to figure out if one of the remains belongs to his brother. But it's a lot more than that too. You also have detectives who are a little bit away from the town, like the main detectives of the area, and their introduction to the town as well, surrounded with some supernatural folklore-y type of things that the small town is really fearful of. Same with the brother. When he gets introduced to the town, everyone's just kind of weird and it feels like everyone's hiding something. And yeah, this brother just kind of goes on a mission to find his brother. So here's the thing, I really did enjoy this one, but I didn't love it as much as Ronald Malfi's other books, because his other books are so deep and emotional and you just feel the author's pain radiating from them. This one felt a little bit more just like a fiction story, which there's nothing wrong with that, and there are some creepy scenes in there and some really fun writing. So I do not want to deter you from reading this book at all. And again, if it's free on Amazon, highly recommend reading it. It is a blast to read, but I just didn't connect with it on a deeper level like I did with some of his other books, which again, there's not a problem with. And then also just the twin thing kind of me sometimes. My mom and and her sister are twins. We're twins. Yeah, so I grew up with twin sisters, identical twins. And so with like identical twin mystical stuff kind of there, sometimes it just makes me like, because I don't know. I don't know. I just have a little bit, I guess, of like a pre-existing to twin stuff because my mom is a twin sister. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely something so fucking special about those relationships. But I think the way that it was done, just some of the stuff I was just like, all right, okay, you know. But anyways, such a great book still. Do highly recommend. It just wasn't my favorite of his books, but still a great horror book. Like if you don't care about the deeper stuff and you don't care about like the drug addiction and the loss and the pain and the grief and like all the stuff that I connect with his stories, it is just at its base level a great, creepy, fun horror book. Wow, that was good timing. Next, I read The Black Farm by Elias Withrow? Elias? I'm not sure. This one was very unique. I don't know that it's considered an extreme horror book, although in the beginning it does say the story is not for the faint of heart. So definitely more extreme than a typical horror book for sure, but I don't know if it's considered extreme horror. There's no like extreme horror warning on here. And honestly, most of the more extreme stuff is near the beginning and near the end. And so in the middle, you do get kind of a break from the messed up stuff, but there is some messed up stuff in here. So, you know, check your warnings if you're sensitive to stuff. But this is basically, actually, let me make sure I'm not giving anything away. Basically, it's about a couple that's had a really hard time recently, and they have kind of a pact to take their lives together. But after they do so, they wake up on the other side and realize that it says here, death isn't the gentle darkness they expected. So yeah, this one is one of the more unique books that I've read, certainly. And it really is just kind of this other reality of just super demented, messed up stuff. But I do also think, and maybe this is just me, but I do also think that there's kind of an underlying message around under here, you know, not saying fully that this was the author's intent, but I think you could definitely read it this way of like, life can get really hard, but you have to fight through it kind of thing. I don't know. Let me know if you guys have read this one. There's some messed up stuff in here, but it's not as terrible as other stuff is. And I think I was just mainly intrigued by the uniqueness of the story. Like this author really was like, I'm not writing the same book everyone's writing. I'm doing something completely different. And I really commend him on that. And so I am definitely more interested in reading some of his other work. I thought that it was definitely unique enough that it kept me interested. It wasn't like anything I have ever read before. And yeah, I thought that it was very entertaining. Next up, I read His and Hers by Alice Feeney. All right, another thriller here. So here's the thing. I asked you guys for recommendations on thrillers that weren't predictable, and someone said, oh, I've heard this one wasn't predictable. And you are correct. It is not predictable. You will not predict the ending. However, if the ending is so absolutely ridiculous that none of this is possible because the ending is so wild, I don't know if I consider that a great read. This one is about a woman and a man who are divorced. They live in different towns, but when a murder happens in the small town, the woman comes to the small town where she grew up because she's a reporter. And so she's recently lost her job as an anchor. And so now she's just on kind of duty out in the field. And so she's reporting on this murder that happened in the small town that she grew up in. And you go back and forth between his and her perspectives of the couple that was once married, and then you find out more about the town and them growing up and them as people and all that sort of stuff. This was the same writer of Rock, Paper, Scissors that I've read, and I talked to you about how she has a lot of these lines where they're really great. Like there's a lot of stuff that I highlighted in here. This one says, as a teenager, all I wanted was to be the same as everyone else. It's only now that I realize how dull my life might have turned out if I was. And so I thought that was a great line. And then there's stuff like this, amazed that two imperfect people could somehow produce a child, such a perfect child. I thought that was a great line. I think when we finally get what we want, it loses its value. So there's a lot of these one-liners in here, and a lot of them are really great. But then you come to some of these. This one says, his messy gray eyebrows made an exaggerated effort to stretch across his heavily lined forehead like long-lost friends who only fight when they finally meet in the middle. Huh? And I guess they're similes, right? metaphors using like and, right? That's a simile and not a metaphor. Well, anyways, that is what my main issue was in the book, was the similes just popping up here and there. And then some of them are just interesting. Let me find what I highlighted here. Oh, this one just says, and bite my tongue so often, I'm surprised it doesn't have a hole. That was the same line that was in Rock, Paper, Scissors, so I just highlighted that too. This one, lives are like light bulbs. They're not as hard to change as people think. Like, what in the Snapple cap is going on here? We tend to categorize people the way we categorize books. If they don't fit neatly into a genre, we're not sure what to make of them. There is a curtain we all hide behind. The only difference is who pulls it aside. I just couldn't get past these lines. Like shoes, the stories we tell about ourselves get bigger with age. Like, there's just so many lines that brought me out of the story, and even more so, I think, in this book than in Rock, Paper, Scissors. And Rock, Paper, Scissors, there were so many redeeming qualities, and I really, really enjoyed the story. And I did actually enjoy the story, and I don't mind her writing. Like, I think her writing is good, but I don't think you need a simile on every page. I think that honestly just pulls people out of the story. Or me, people like me, not everybody, because people really enjoyed the story. It has high ratings. I'm not trying to deter anybody from reading it. But of the two, I definitely preferred Rock, Paper, Scissors. This was another one where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm halfway through. I'm like, I don't know who the killer is. And then at the end, you're like, huh? Well, and you didn't even, what do you mean? And it was just so unbelievable that one, the ending infuriated me a little bit. So that's how I felt about that one. Okay. The next one I read was, no, I listened to this one on audiobook. This was Never Lie by Frida McFadden. A lot of thrillers this month, and a lot of people, again, love Frida McFadden's work, so I was excited to listen to this one. I told you guys, I accidentally used my husband's credit card on Audible, somehow signed him up for Audible, and so I have a bunch of credits over there. So this year I was like, you know what, I really should use those credits. I'll use them on a bunch of thriller books, because I know I probably will be a little bit disappointed in them, but technically it's free because my husband bought them. Anyways, I ended up listening to this one, Never Lie. And I usually don't prefer audiobooks. However, because there were so few characters, it was so easy to keep everything in order. It was a really easy listen on an audiobook. I also loved the narrator. I think that's my favorite narrator I've ever heard so far on Audible. It's about a man and a woman who choose a giant blizzard to go look for a house, and then they get stuck and they have to spend the weekend there. The house belonged previously to a woman who disappeared. She was a psychologist. And when the woman ends up, her name's Trish, when Trish ends up kind of looking around the house, she finds tapes of Adrian, the therapist that had gone missing, her recorded sessions with her and other patients. So I did enjoy it, and I really, really enjoyed the story up until, again, about closer to the end is when I started going, I did figure out some things. I think some things were a little bit obvious, but not everything, which is cool. And the ending, I was like, oh, okay, I can get behind this. And then the last line really got me. The last line, I was like, but why? I was just very confused by the last line in the story. Honestly, if that last line was removed, I would have definitely given this one a higher score and enjoyed it more. I did really like Trish, the main character. I thought she was a fun narrator, and I really enjoyed her towards the end of the story. I thought she was pretty funny. So I didn't hate this one at all, and it wasn't, you know, extremely disappointing like some other thriller books that I've read. Like some other thriller books that I've read. But it wasn't also my favorite book ever. But for a thriller, it was fine. So I'll definitely read more of her work and see how I feel about it. Oh, oops, I read this one first, The Hollow Dead by Darcy Coates. Actually, no, I think I read this one after. This one is number 4 in the Gravekeeper series. I've read a lot of just okay books this month, I feel like. This one was okay, it was fine too, but it's number 4 in the series, and I much prefer the previous 3. It's about a girl who wakes up in the woods. She can't remember her past, but she knows she's being chased by someone. So she's running away and trying to come to safety. She comes across this small town and ends up making friends there, and then goes kind of on a mission to figure out who is following her and what's up with her past. Oh, and she can see ghosts. So the last 3 have been pretty heavy in the ghost department, where she's kind of selected a specific ghost and followed their whole story, and everything's kind of wrapped back around. And this one had answers, but not very satisfying answers of kind of where she came from and stuff. And it just didn't feel as well written as the other ones. Like the ghost, the only real ghost in the story, like the individual ghost that's paid attention to, just felt like it was kind of thrown in there. The bad guy that was kind of thrown in there didn't really feel like it made sense with the story. It just honestly felt like it was kind of written not as well as the other ones. That's how I felt with this one. It was fine. It's not the last in the series, so I'll definitely continue on in the series, but I was a little disappointed with that one, so that's a bummer. But the last book that I read, and I believe this was my favorite of the month, one of my favorites of the month, was The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan. And this one was great. This one was so great. Okay, I really enjoyed this one. So you guys know I'm kind of venturing into strange book territory. This one definitely belongs in that category. It's about a group of children after their parents pass away. I'm not giving that away, right? Yeah, okay. And kind of just their life after their parents. Hold on, I took some notes on here because there were things that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so first, I'm not recommending this book for everyone. There's some messed up stuff in here. It's kind of bizarre and messed up. Just like with the other books that I read, there's definitely some stuff that won't be for everyone. Absolutely. So not recommending this for everyone, but it was a book that really fucking intrigued me. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was great. Okay, so you have these 4 children. It's a daughter, a son, a daughter, and a son. You get to see their life after losing their parents. Now, you guys know my parents have passed away. I really connect with books about grief, specifically about losing your parents, but obviously about just kind of losing anybody in the process of grief in general. And in fact, I think maybe I'll do a whole video on kind of my favorite books about the grieving process. But I think why I connected with this one so much is it's specifically about children losing their parents. And man, there's just so much in here. And don't get me wrong, it's messed up, but I think it's all there for a reason. There's definitely some sexual undertones in here, and other stuff that is messed up, but I do believe that it's all there for a reason. See, it's not coming of age, but you have kids that are trying to figure out life without guidance. And so you get these really messed up snapshots of how each child is dealing with this grief. The youngest son reverts and pretends like he's a baby. Then the next daughter up is just super shy and won't talk to anyone, just sits in a room all day. Then the son, he really withdraws and, you know, focuses more on sexuality and things like that. And then the eldest daughter, she tries to get attention, but then also does try to step into some sort of parental role because she feels like that she feels the responsibility of everything on her shoulders because she's the eldest child. I also really enjoyed, I know a lot of people talk about Wuthering Heights, about the Moors, how they mirror, okay, this is from Friends. This is the only time that maybe not everybody talks about, no, it's in the comments too. It's in the reviews too. But I remember in Friends how they take that literature class and Phoebe tells Rachel that the Moors kind of mirror Heathcliff. It's in the reviews too, but that's the most prominent thing in my head. Yes, I'm using Friends as my literary references from now on. People do talk about how the atmosphere and the weather kind of becomes its own character in that book, which I don't necessarily know that I agree with, although I do think it's there for a reason, but it's not really as prominent as I thought going into it that it would be. But anyways, how people feel about Wuthering Heights, that's kind of how I felt about The Cement Garden. It really does show the outside of their houses. Like the whole neighborhood is kind of dilapidated, overrun with weeds. Nothing's beautiful and perfect, and I think it does really mirror the kids' grief and guilt and like what they're going through. And especially the boy who's the narrator of the whole story, his name's Jack. He's the second oldest, and he describes how anytime that he's not speaking to his mom or like directly thinking about her, he feels as if he's asleep. There's just some stuff in here that I really connected with. on, you know, that level of grief and guilt. Not everything. Oh my God, not everything. Please do not read this story and think that this is what everybody goes through when dealing with grief. But I think it's such an interesting analysis of going through grief and dealing with it without any guidance. Oh yeah, okay, so I said that their neighborhood mirrors how their own lives are kind of falling apart. They're still also children too, and they do have moments where they're like very inappropriate moments where they're laughing and joking around, and so you really do get to see their adolescence through such a tough time and through a time that like you should be adult and grown up. And there's some funny scenes in here revolving around some messed up stuff, but you are constantly reminded of how they are children. I wrote that it is bizarre and fucked up, but it really isn't compared to a lot of the stuff that I've read. If you guys are into extreme horror and stuff, this is not a horror book. It's not extreme, nothing like that. But I'm just trying to say that it's not any worse than the stuff that I've been reading up until now. But for a typical reader, it might be a bit jarring and bizarre. But it is told in more of a linear way. It's also not like a slice of life type of story, because those are typically books where you just kind of get the mundaneness of life, but it's written kind of like that, but not in the mundane sense. Like it is their most trying times, but it is written as just like, oh, I woke up today and this and that. So it feels a little bit like slice of life, although that doesn't really encompass the writing style of it. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not just confusing you. Okay, but it really is about the family unit and just staying together, and it is also very interesting when you analyze the ending and you analyze about you analyze on why they got there. And there's some comment in here of why they won't let other people into their family and trust other people, and then you get to the end and you're like, well, okay, well, you know, there's a reason for that. And so I think, yeah, at its core it is about the bond of the family unit. Oh, the first line. Let me read you the first line here. I picked up this book, I read the first line, and I'm like, I'm in, I'm hooked. It says, I did not kill my father, but I sometimes felt I had helped him on his way. One of the best opening lines I think I've read in a story, just super engaging. You want to know what happens. Yeah, I think that's kind of all I have to say about this one. I don't want to give too much away. I don't even really know what category this belongs to besides fiction. Let me see. Yeah, it's just classified under fiction. It's definitely not going to be for everybody. However, I do find some beauty under the surface, under the messed up stuff. And that is where I will continue to be in the literary genre, you know, between books that make me uncomfortable but really make me think, and books that I can connect with on some level. So if you want, again, another book where you can kind of dig under the surface and find your own meaning, I think this is it. I think I said meaning, your own meaning. Jeez. And yeah, if you guys want to dig and do a little dig. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Okay, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was worth reading. However, it's not going to be for everyone. That's what I'll say. It did also a little bit remind me, they are very different books. I'm not comparing them, but it did a little bit remind me of We Have Always Lived in This Castle by Shirley Jackson, because the children in that book also are very just kind of obsessed with each other, and they don't want anybody else infiltrating, and they're also very strange and weird. And so there were I felt like some, not similarities in story, but I did feel the same reading about those characters as I did reading about the Shirley Jackson book characters. Just kind of like, these people are fucking weird. But otherwise, yeah, a very unique, interesting read. How have I never read any of this man's books before? I don't know, but you better believe that I'm putting a bunch of his books on my list for my birthday, so hopefully I get more of those. Anyways, those are the books that I've read this month. Let me know what you guys have read. Let me know how you guys feel about these. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Again, once more, fuck you, Heathcliff. Bye!
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.